Thank you, Janet. So a few thoughts from Marie Sauter. To lead, the verb. I asked, what does that mean to be a leader? Who is a leader? Who can be a leader? As a member of the Leadership Development Committee, I have seen leadership qualities exhibited throughout our congregational family. That said, I don't believe that many of us would say that we have been leaders necessarily. So I searched for a way to shed light on the questions of leadership through the voices of well-known leaders. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines a leader as one who leads or commands. While that's clear and straightforward, these words feel flat to me, but Merriam-Webster also defines the verb to lead as someone who guides, especially by going in advance, someone who directs on a course or in a direction, someone who serves as a channel for, someone who goes through, someone who leans towards to have a result, someone who guides someone or something along a way. Did any of these resonate with you? I find nature to be a great source for understanding life and even leadership. Picture geese or cranes that migrate hundreds or even thousands of miles. They fly in an echelon, a V, in which the lead goose flies at the point and breaks the headwind while the rest of the flock forms the V. Soon the leader will drop back and another goose moves up to fill the point. And so it goes until the flock arrives at its destination. Amelia Earhart, American aviation pioneer, said, the most difficult thing is the decision to act. The rest is mere tenacity. Jack Welch, American business executive, stated, before you are a leader, success is all about growing yourself. When you become a leader, success is all about others. Have you ever seen that beautiful, graceful sky dance in which an entire flock of birds, such as starlings or pigeons, moves as one, soaring through the sky, leaning to the left together, and then to the right, and then back, and then to the left again? This is called murmuration. Mahatma Gandhi, Indian independence movement leader, stated, I suppose leadership at one time meant muscles, but today it means getting along with people. Stephen Covey, author and educator, said, what you do has far greater impact than what you say. I asked, why should one lead? Why would one lead? I searched my own experience and observations and found that we lead for a cause. Well, I should say I lead for a cause, a vision, a goal, and with passion. Greta Thunberg, Swedish environmental activist, said, we are the ones that make a difference. We, the people in Extinction Rebellion and the children's school strike for the climate, we are the ones making a difference. We lead to influence. A leader like a shepherd, he stays behind the flock, letting the most nimble go out ahead, whereupon the others follow, not realizing that all along they're being directed from behind. Nelson Mandela, South African anti-apartheid revolutionary political leader and philanthropist. We lead to achieve interconnectedness, to be in union, to co-create. I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the water to create many ripples. The words of Mother Teresa, Albanian, Indian, Roman Catholic nun and missionary. We lead to grow and learn about ourselves when we have a willingness to change. John F. Kennedy, former US president, said, leadership and learning are indispensable to each other. We lead to contribute, to address a need. In the words of Indira Gandhi, former Prime Minister of India, there are two kinds of people, those who do the work and those who take the credit. Try to be in the first group. There's less competition there. I asked, who should lead? Who should one lead? One voice can change a room. Barack Obama, former US president. Mahatma Gandhi, be the change that you wish to see in the world. And finally, I asked, when should one lead? Again, Barack Obama, Change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We're the ones that we've been waiting for. We're the change that we seek. And last, when the whole world is silent, when the whole world is silent, even one voice becomes powerful. And that's Malala Yousafzai, education activist and Nobel Peace Prize recipient. Thank you so very much.
And now some words from Mark Sanborn. Anyone, anywhere can make a positive difference. I found my inner leader as a teacher. This vocation gave me a sense of purpose, helping children develop skills they could use in everyday life. While leading educational assistants, I guided their talents and experience to enrich our classroom community. Developing these skills enabled positive interactions and a happy, motivated classroom. I taught students who were developmentally delayed at Oñate High School. I worked on a team that consisted of other teachers and educational assistants. I knew that in order to have a happy work environment, I needed to create positive relationships with my colleagues, educational assistants, and students. I used encouraging language with my students and gave them specific opportunities to praise each other's work and deeds. By teaching encouraging vocabulary, I tried to guide the students to be specific and use a variety of different compliments. I gave them points in our dojo reinforcement program for being helpful, encouraging, and friendly. Dojo was an app that used pictures relating to specific positive behaviors. When a student did a good deed or worked well, they got to tap a picture that would voice what they had done well. Every day, a different student was responsible for teaching the calendar information, exercise, and reading activities. This helped develop skills, built confidence, and provided positive reinforcement. With my educational assistants, we had team meetings where I acknowledged specific ways they helped the class that week. In the meetings, we used problem solving to change the adults and students in effective behavior, including mine. The assistants came up with creative ideas that we implemented to help our classroom community. Many times the educational assistants would bring in their own resources or use their specific talents to make our classroom fun. For example, one assistant was a sound therapist. She brought in instruments to help students relax. I think that encouraging positive behavior has many good outcomes. It creates respect for the members. They developed a common bond and were motivated to work as a team. People are happy and want to be part of both work and play. I have learned so much as a teacher. Thank you.
We lead each other every day, as we saw in that video, even from a very young age. I'd like to thank Janet for recommending that video, and I would like to thank Olive and Savannah for their contributions. I'm going to talk today about some exemplary young leaders. This past Wednesday was Epiphany, a Christian holy day, but there's a more everyday and non-religious sense to this word. To have an epiphany means to have a revelation, to understand something in a completely new way. I think of the Christmas movie, It's a Wonderful Life, where George Bailey has an epiphany. He suddenly realizes life is good despite its problems. To paraphrase the song, he was blind, but now he sees. Truth leads us. We see truth in our principles and try to be led by them. We don't see truth in some claim. If we don't see truth in some claim, then we simply follow it. We reject false claims as misleading. And when we have been convinced to believe something that is false, we say we have been misled. Every day we lead each other, even from a very young age, as we just saw in the video. When we know a truth that might help, we want to share it, as do others with us. The truth is the same, whether it is spoken by a Buddha or a babe. But an unconscious ageism might prevent us from hearing it. Even worse, we might talk people into forgetting the truths that they know, make them underestimate themselves. So here are a very few high instances of young leaders, exemplars who can help us remember the high potential of youth. These cases have some common elements. First, the situation is awful. There's an existential threat to how we live, or even whether we live at all. Also, adults have failed to fix the problem. And finally, a young person or persons clearly see a truth that has to be acted on. The first example is from the 1400s France. Things were pretty awful. A plague had killed 1/3 of the people fairly recently. The English army had occupied most of France. Villages were being raided frequently. The government was failing, and there was famine. These were all existential threats. The adults had failed, but Joan of Arc had a truth, an absolute faith that she would save France. This illiterate peasant girl of 17 first convinced warriors, then nobles, then the king, and then led the armies to victory. She did what seemed impossible. She learned to read and write, very uncommon for that age, compressed years of training in riding and armor into only a few weeks, overruled senior military leaders, and then proved her strategy in battle. She was badly wounded, but kept fighting for hours. Despite the glory, she never celebrated victory. Instead, she comforted the fallen of both armies, weeping. Everyone was amazed by what she did, and her story reads like a fantasy. She did indeed save France. Second example comes from Birmingham, Alabama in the 1960s. Martin Luther King was in the Birmingham jail. Adults had failed to respond to his call for protesters to fill the jails, and the civil rights movement was in danger. But the children of Birmingham knew the awful existential truth of racism. As Ralph Abernathy explained, don't think these smallest ones don't know what they want. They do. They know they can't go to Kiddieland and ride the ponies with the white kids, and they know they can't appear on the afternoon TV shows like the kids, white kids. The journalist David Halberstam estimates that approximately 10,000 children were jailed in Birmingham. Some of them were as young as 5. This children's protest led to significant desegregation and revitalized the civil rights movement. A third example comes from the shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Georgia in 2018. The situation was awful. 17 were killed and 17 were wounded. Adults had failed to protect the children. During the shooting, while students hid in the closet wondering if they would be found and killed, David Hogg, a student journalist, interviewed students on the topic of gun control during the shooting. It is not surprising that under these circumstances, some students had a change of heart, more inclined toward gun control. The last example is Greta Thunberg. Climate change is a hard truth to know. By the time we clearly see its effects, it may be too late. So we have to use the abstract tools of science to understand it. It's not easy to know this truth in your head, and it is far harder to take it into your heart. A torn and bloody shirt says trouble loud and clear, but 350 parts per billion that we can't even see does not set off our alarms. Here, Greta has an advantage. She has a degree of autism, which she views as her superpower. As Naomi Klein explains it, people with autism tend to be extremely literal and, as a result, often have trouble coping with cognitive dissonance, the gaps between what we know intellectually in our heads and what we do. So after watching a film about climate change, the other students go back to talking about shopping and flying as if they had not heard anything. We all do this to some degree. But if there was a problem with Greta, it was that she understood too well and could not ignore what other people ignored. Now it's time to get in trouble. Over Christmas, it occurred to me that Greta is like Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer. Both are picked on because they aren't normal, but then it is precisely because of that handicap or oddity that they are able to lead. Now, I know that's a ridiculous comparison, but us weirdos of the world might be helped by it. Climate change is an awful situation, and adults have failed to address this existential threat. Greta has taken this truth to heart and is guided by it. I wish it were not true, but I'm afraid she does have a very good idea of the truth. She's not a climate scientist, but she is a geek, and climate scientists have praised her knowledge and understanding. I'm not saying we need to be like these exemplary leaders, these people who do the hardest things. There are an infinite number of smaller truths to live by, and they will never cease to be important, no matter how big the other truths may be. But these high examples of young leadership remind us not to set our sights too low, not to underestimate what youth can do, or any of us for that matter. People will tell us, you don't know this, you don't know that, and often they are right, but not always. Then you must be led by the truth that others do not yet know, that only you know. When you are sure of this truth, hold to it as to your only lamp.